Good morning here at Memento Jiu-Jitsu, doing our book club. This time we're reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and this reading section was books 1 through 4. Today it's Evan Minard and
Tristan Pack
right here. Smaller group today, but we're going to continue on. And what I have for book 1 is it's broken up into little sections, each book, and then also chapters, I would say, or paragraphs, and then different lines in each of those paragraphs. So in 3-3 of book 1, it reads, also simplicity of living, well clear of habits of the rich. 7-3, to be readily recalled to conciliation with those who have taken or given offense, just as soon as they themselves are willing to turn back. And 12, rarely and never without essential cause to say or write to anyone that I'm too busy. And so what those mean to me is simplicity of living, just basically staying, keeping it simple. And we've done that in the other book clubs, but as you get more elaborate, as you have more lavish lifestyle, you have more risk of losing those things and or fear of losing those things. The readily recalled to conciliation, don't take things to offense, and willing to walk away and turn your back and move away from those situations. And the last one that I found interesting, never say you're too busy. Either decide you don't want to do something, just be more clear about it, because the saying you're too busy is kind of a cop-out, is the way I read that. Mm-hmm. And because we all have the same amount of time. So you're either filling it with things you want to fill it with, or you're filling it with things you shouldn't. And being clear about what you want to have in your life.
Yeah, I kind of analyzed this chapter a little bit differently because there's so much good stuff in here that I kind of just wrote some notes in the back of the chapter. The main thing I thought of when I was reading this chapter was like the word gratitude, because I feel like he's grateful for everybody. And also, I wrote recognize who is in your mirror, because like when you look in the mirror, you're not only seeing yourself, you're seeing like a culmination of all your choices. And I feel like all of those choices are influenced by the people in your life. And not once in this book does he really take credit for anything that he's learned. He's always like kind of giving credit towards other people. And if like you were saying, like there's a lot of good stuff in here, but the entire chapter, if you follow it, is like the most optimal way to live your life. And that's like the entire first chapter is just like him thanking different people for turning him into the person he was. And so I feel like that he also doesn't point out their flaws. Like everything in here is like a good thing about the person. And so like one thing this chapter like kind of helped me with is like gratitude for the people you have in your life, and like not being too hard on them and not being too hard on yourself. So I thought I really like book 1, Depths and Lessons. That's like my favorite part of the book, honestly.
Yeah, he goes on. Each specific person he thanks is for a specific purpose. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
No, I think that, like I said, there's so much in there that like I got a few for book 2.
Yeah. Sure. Why don't you start with book 2 then?
Okay. Let's see here. Obviously, I got to do number 11 because that's like, I guess I should say chapter 11. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. If it doesn't harm your character, how can it harm your life? Death and life, success and failure, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all these happen to good and bad alike, and they are neither noble nor shameful, and hence neither are good nor bad. So the first part of that's like what Stoicism is in general. And what I feel like this whole book is about is like you could die at any moment. Like don't be afraid of that. Just use that to live the best life you can. And the main things that will stop you from living the best life you can is, the infractions other people commit upon you. So like if you like have someone do something bad to you, you think it's like, oh, they did this thing bad to me. But like the chapter said, if it doesn't harm your character, how can it harm your life? And another part, I don't know if it's in this book specifically, but it says if you believe yourself to be hurt, you will be, but if you believe yourself not to be hurt, you won't be. So it's like what others do shouldn't affect what you do, what you say, and what you think.
That's part of my book too, was all is as thinking makes it so, which is exactly what you just said. Mm-hmm. If you're hurt, if you think you're hurt, then you are. If you think that you aren't, then you aren't. Mm-hmm. And that's the thinking is what makes it so.
And that's a crazy thing to think about. Like if you think about like you believe it that you were wronged in some way and that's why you feel bad, it's a really weird thing to think about. Like whenever I get angry, like if a student is acting up in class, I could get mad at them, or I could be like, why am I choosing to get upset right now. Maybe he doesn't know that he needs to be doing this. Maybe he's had a bad day at school, you know? So, like, why am I choosing to take this, like, so personally, you know? That's something I always try to think about.
What I wrote down or what I highlighted in book 2 was that says offenses of lust are graver than those of anger. So he kind of differentiates the different things that can cause problems, and that was in number 10.
Yeah.
And he was comparing the ranking of sins, and basically, essentially, anger is one of those things that we're all involved in and can be provocated in different ways. But that it's easier to control that than it is to control lust. Mm-hmm. And because it's just a deeper desire that's, you know, basically baked into our being. Mm-hmm. And so having control of both of those is where he says is a great virtue.
Yeah. I feel like so you could lust for something. You could be like, I want this, I want that. And like just wanting that, I feel like does a lot more harm over the long term than like being angry. Because like anger is like a snap of the finger. You can like not be angry. But then it's like the desire for something to be different, the desire for something like tangible. Like that's like
coveting something.
Yeah.
Or, you know, having that energy go into something that you want.
Mm-hmm.
What is death? We'll conclude then that is nothing more than a function of nature. And if anyone is frightened of a function of nature, he is a mere child. Mm-hmm. And death is not only a function of nature, but also to her benefit. It follows that the longest and shortest lives are brought to the same state. The present moment is equal for all, so that what is passing is equal also. The loss, therefore, turns out to be the merest fragment of time. And this was all is as thinking makes it so. This is number 16. The soul of the man himself, first and foremost, when it becomes, as far as it can, a separate growth, a sort of tumor on the universe, because to resent anything that happens is to separate oneself and revolt from nature, which holds in collective embrace the particular of all things. And that goes back to the wholeness you were mentioning, you know, the dichotomy of things, the paradox. And essentially, when you're revolting against what has happened, you're revolting against nature. Mm-hmm. And 17-2, this consists in keeping the divinity within us inviolate and free from harm, master of pleasure and pain, doing nothing without aim, truth, or integrity, and independent of others' actions or failure to act. And so, essentially, being a master of pleasure and pain and knowing where you're moving.
Mm-hmm. One more thing about book 2 that I noticed is he uses the word nature a lot. Like he talks a lot about nature. And I'm a big nature guy, so I like how in the very end of the chapter he says nothing natural is evil, and then before that he says the nature of the world, my nature, how I relate to the world, what proportion of it I make up, and that you are a part of nature and no one can prevent you from speaking and acting in harmony with it. So I feel like if you understand like how the world this is supposed to go, like how you were saying, like why be afraid of death if it's a natural part of life? Like there's nothing to be afraid of if it's natural. Knowing that that's like going to be ultimately your end destination, whether it's like 20 years from now or 2 days from now. Like knowing like who you are as a person, but also like how you benefit the world. You know, I feel like that's a big part of like what Stoicism helped me with is like understanding that I need to be a part of my community, because if I'm not helping others, then I'm not really a net good for the world. And like if you love the world, then you should be doing something for it. You know. I'm also knowing that like you don't mean like jack shit and the ultimate like scale of things. Like that's something that I've like if I have a bad training day or something, I'm like, does it really like no one knows who I am, and in like 100 years this isn't gonna matter. Like
in
why
the
am
grand
I getting
scheme, yeah.
Like the grand scheme, what matters in the grand scheme is like how you're the mark you leave on this world, if it's a good or bad one, not like if you were late to work like for 10 minutes, that you were 10 minutes late to work, or if like someone yelled at you for doing something stupid, like that stuff doesn't actually matter. Like that has no reflection upon the world. And also that like you choose what you put into the world, and you shouldn't let others choose like what that is for you. So like you shouldn't let like if someone makes you mad, you shouldn't let their like with what they did to you determine what you do for the world. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's like what a lot of people sadly do, is like if someone was mean to them, they're mean to everyone else because they get angry.
They let the outside world influence their inner world.
Yep.
And that's kind of going into book 3. It says here, do not waste the remaining part of your life in thoughts about other people. Makes you stray from the close watch on your own directing mind, which is kind of goes back to, if we're focused on other people and what they're doing to us and how they're living their lives, we're not focusing on ourselves and how we're showing up and what we're doing. Book 3, chapter 11-2. Nothing is so conducive to greatness of mind as the ability to subject each element of our experience in life to methodical and truthful examination. Always at the same time using this scrutiny as a means to reflect on the nature of the universe, the contribution any given action or event makes to that nature, the value this has for the whole, and the value it has for man and man in his inhabitant of his highest city, of which all other cities are mere households. 11-3, ask then, what is this which is now making its impression on me? What is it composed of? How long in the nature of things will it last? What virtue is needed to meet it? Gentleness, for example, or courage, truthfulness, loyalty, simplicity, self-sufficiency, and so on. And 16-2. So if all else is held in common with the categories mentioned above, it follows that the defining characteristic of the good person is to love and embrace whatever happens to him along his thread of fate, and not to pollute the divinity which is seated within his breast or trouble it with a welter of confused impressions, but to preserve its constant favor in proper allegiance to God, saving only what is true, doing only what is just. And what I got from that was essentially not arguing with the past, because that's the definition of an insane person.
Yep.
Is bargaining or arguing with what has happened, but choosing to create what you want in the future from the present moment. And your thoughts about whatever has happened is what dictates the unfolding of it. And so I see this as like taking ultimate responsibility and self-examination of the events in your life and seeing how it affects you and what you can do to show up to have it affected in a positive way.
Yeah, mine kind of goes based off that. It's number 5. It's how to act. He says, never under compulsion, out of selfishness, without forethought, with misgivings. So it's like, every action you take should be one that is like measured, and it shouldn't be one out of compulsion. And that's something like every time I make like a choice, if I don't know if it's the right one to make, I always just ask myself if it's like a net good or a net bad. And if it's a net good, then I'm just gonna do it. If it's net bad, I'm just not gonna do it. This one's I really don't know what this word means. It says don't gussy up your thoughts. I really don't know what gussy means, but I'm going to assume it means like play them up. That's what it
dress it up or like make it look fancy or
because then you're just focused too much on like what's in your head. Like because like for me, like I can get in some pretty bad spirals where it's like it could be like a competition and I'm like, oh, I lost this competition, and that's all it is. But I could be like, oh, I lost this competition and now I'm not going to be a world champion. And it's like I'm gussying up the thought just because I'm allowing my emotions to take hold of that thought. No surplus words or unnecessary actions. This is one I've been trying to work on for my entire life because I talk a lot. And so every week I'm always like, don't talk as much as you did last week, because I feel like sometimes I get on tangents. Unnecessary actions is definitely like sometimes like you have to do things that like you don't want to do, especially like as a father. You have to do things for your kids. You're like, I'd rather be doing this, but like I help my kids. But an unnecessary action for me is like sitting down and watching like Netflix when you should be doing like going out and like getting groceries or something like that. Let the spirit in you represent a man, an adult, a citizen, a Roman, a ruler, taking up his post like a soldier and patiently awaiting his recall from life, needing no oath or witness. And that kind of goes with the last part, to stand up straight, not straightened. I feel like that's like my favorite quote of the entire chapter, is to stand up straight, not straightened, because like to stand up straight is like a choice. Like you are choosing to stand up straight and in spite of like maybe if you had a bad day, or in spite of if you've had a lot of loss. Not straightened, I feel like, is like someone else straightened you. Like your boss told you to stand up straight, or like your coach told you to do this, or your parents told you to do this, or your spouse told you to do this. Instead, it's like you are choosing to do it just based on your own free will.
Obviously, these books were translated, so mine's slightly different, which is kind of cool too, because that same line is, your duty is to stand straight, not held straight. So like you said, it's, the translator, the author, is the one that takes the liberty to do that. And I think that that's totally true right there. It's like you are responsible for standing straight. You're not being held up by
Yeah.
someone.
I try to get that, because I know when I was a kid, I struggled with that a lot, like understanding that like it's up to me, not up to my parents, because like my parents did everything for me. So I feel like that's one of the biggest lessons I try to put into my kids. Like, I'm not asking you guys to do this because I want you to do it. Like, when you get older, you're going to have to do this. Like, and that's just how it is. Like, you may not want to clean dishes. Like, I always tell them this. Like, my mom always made me clean dishes, and I was like, I don't know why I'm having to do this. We have a dishwasher. I don't have to do it. And then when I was like, but when I got to my apartment, there were dishes in the sink, and there was no dishwasher. And so now I have to clean the dishes, because that's just what being an adult is. It's like, it's not stuff you're going to want to do, but it's stuff you have to do. And I feel like that's like, that was the hardest part moving into adulthood for me, was realizing that like I'm the one who's supposed to be doing everything, you know. That was definitely a challenge.
And this is the last book of our book club this week, and it's book 4. And I have everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, and self-sufficient praise is not a part of it. And that kind of goes back to everything you talked about, your virtue and truth, and these themes hold themselves. They don't have to be appreciated. Mm-hmm. Truth doesn't care to be appreciated. Yeah. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And they talk about that, like a pearl doesn't care to be beautiful. A pearl is a pearl. Yeah. Regardless of what
it doesn't think. It doesn't care. Like what it thinks about itself is not going to change what it is.
Yeah. And 24. Most of what we say and do is unnecessary. Mm-hmm. Remove the superfluity, and you will have more time and less bother. 33. So where should a man direct his endeavor? Here only in a right mind, action for the common good, speech incapable of lies, a disposition to welcome all that happens as necessary, intelligible, flowing from an equally intelligible spring of origin. Mm-hmm. And this is one of my favorites right here. It is my bad luck that this happened to me. No, you should rather say it is my good luck that, although this happened to me, I can bear without pain. Mm-hmm. Neither crushed by the present nor fearful of the future, because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. Mm-hmm. And go then for the healthiest in all ways, in all you say and do. Such a purpose releases a man from the labors of service, from all need to manage or impress. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I this chapter to me was, again, the whole theme of this book, I'm realizing, is about responsibility, personal mm-hmm. responsibility. Yeah. I like your word for the first book is gratitude, but that we're responsible for our thoughts and yep. the interpretation and the impression that what life has on us, how we interpret that, mm-hmm. and then create meaning from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like one of the biggest things. Like I journal a lot. I actually call my journal meditations because I'm just like a straight copier of Marcus Aurelius. But like the only two things you have control over is 1, your perception of things, and 2, the effort you put into things after your perception of it. So it's like anything that happens to me, I have the authority to view it how I want to view it. And like that is like, I feel like that's probably the most powerful thing you can tell someone. It's like, I mean, nobody, but like no one wants to hear that though. Like if it, like I've told my friends, like they're like, man, this person did this to me. I'm like, well, you kind of determine whether or not that messes you up or not. But it kind of sounds like a smart ass comment. It really does, but it's so true. Like if you can just like learn to not let your emotion like get the better of you, and you can just like observe it from an outside point of view, it changes everything. And so one thing that I put on, I thought this was one of the funniest things that I've read in this book, and that was the sort of person is bound to do that, whatever like the wrongdoing was. So that sort of person is bound to do that. You might as well resent a fig tree for secreting juice. Anyway, before long, you'll both be dead. And I was like, oh, well, damn, all right. Yeah. I always try to remind myself of that. Like if someone does something like real bad, or like I don't like what someone did, I always tell myself, like, if you were in their exact position, you would have to make the same choice they just made. Like you would have no other choice but to make the one they made. And if you were like aware enough to make a different choice, they didn't make it, and you got to accept them for that, because like you probably wouldn't have. It would have been hard for you to make the right choice. Choose not, like this one, choose not to be harmed. You won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. Like I feel like that's just like the whole book 4, and a lot of the book in general. It's just like, don't be hurt. Like you're fine, you know. And the last one, like this is just a simple one. While you're alive and able, be good. Like that's the only thing you really can do. Like, there's no other reason to not be good. Because I feel like if you are negative towards the world, that's because you're letting your emotions get the better of you because you've perceived something was negative for you. But if you perceive it as like, yeah, it sucks, but I can handle it, there's no logical reason for you to not be a net good for the world unless you're allowing other things to make choices for you. And so I feel like just being good is like the one thing I try to do. And one thing I try to help my kids with. It's like, I don't care about if you're good at this sport. Like, I really don't care. I want you to be like just a good person. There's no reason for you not to be. But there's so many people out there who are just not good people. Mm-hmm. And that's probably my favorite part of the book right there. Or the favorite part of this book specifically is while you're alive and able, be good. That's my go-to right there. So you have any other ones you got here?
I think for me, it's just the theme, and this goes back to you interpret and read a book through the lens at which you see it. So I'm going to see things, and you're going to see things differently, right? Which is the beauty of books and our own journeys. But for me, I was just continually seeing personal responsibility. We are the creators of our lives with our thoughts, words, and actions. And so the way we perceive the world is a direct reflection of how we're being. And when we're finding gratitude and love and discipline and our deepest intentions, and that's what the fruit is what we're gonna have from that. Yep. And so the outside world it can have limited impact on you if you do the work yourself, on yourself. And so meeting all events with gratitude, even the bad things, and just
One thing about this book that really baffles me is the fact that, one, he didn't know he was writing this for anybody. He was writing for himself. And two, what's up, man? And two, he was saying that he was the king of everything. Literally was he had complete rule over everything. And so the fact that he struggled with these things, but even he did his best to right his wrongs and to be a better person. That's something I feel like not many people can do, especially if you're the king of the entire world, So I feel like if he's struggling with it and we struggle with it, we're both the same person. We're both capable human beings. And if you haven't listened to the lecture, there's a lecture on YouTube about Marcus Aurelius that one of the philosophy professors, I don't know what college it was from, but it's one of the best lectures I've ever listened to. And he was saying absolute power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But that didn't happen to Marcus Aurelius because I feel like it's because of this journal that kept him on track. I feel like he could have definitely gone off track if he didn't have the journal. That's why I try to journal.
Self-examination.
Yeah, I try to journal every single day because I feel like if I go a week or two without it, I just go off. I lose my way. I lose my path. I don't really know where I'm going. So that's why I like this because this book actually changed my life. It taught me how to think the right way. It taught me how to act the right way, and it taught me the importance of journaling too. So I feel like this is definitely a book that everybody should read. I think this should be a book that is taught in classes and in high school because I read this outside of high school classes, and this changed my life, and I can only imagine what it would do for other people that I know have struggled through way more than I have and haven't heard this kind of advice, what it could do for them. So I highly recommend anyone who's listening, you got to read this book. It's probably the one book you should read right next to the Bible. So this is the philosopher's Bible, I feel like. So I love it.
Well, we'll keep it short and sweet with this book, as there's it's dense, but it also it has a good theme through it, and we'll cut it here. Anything else? But thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you guys. Hope you guys have a great day.
Take care.